Hi, and welcome back to Beans and Bezels. Direnzo is a microbrand that was established in 2016 and is pretty much a one-man operation fronted by Sergio Direnzo. I became aware of this brand in 2020 during the release of the DRZ03 that we'll be taking a look at today. This watch was presented as a Kickstarter project and was successfully funded, reaching roughly 350,000 US dollars instead of their goal of 20,000 US dollars. I think that itself is quite an achievement. I had my eye on the DRZ03 in red, also known as the Blood Moon, and the DRZ03 in blue, but I try to avoid backing Kickstarter projects since it ties up too much of my money for long periods of time, and I could be using that money to buy watches to review instead. Fortunately, I was able to finally get my hands on one of these watches as part of a watch tour on the Random Rob Patreon group, so thanks Rob for making this possible. This watch had a Kickstarter price of around 550 US dollars and had an eventual retail price of 750 US dollars. Unfortunately, it's currently sold out, so this review is more likely to help you if you're looking to snag one on the pre-owned market. Let's check it out. I measured the case to be 40mm in diameter, 47.5mm from lug to lug, 49.5mm if measured from articulating end links, and 12.5mm tall. The case is mostly brushed, with a few polished elements. The case design follows the Tudor Black Bay family very closely and also reminds me of the Dufresne Waterloo that I recently reviewed. The case is mostly flat and has a mid-case that extends into a pair of lugs with beveled edges. The finishing on the case is decent and the lug width is 20mm. There is a 120 click unidirectional bezel that is easy to grip, but the operating experience is a bit tough, with certain areas offering a lot more resistance than the others. There isn't any backplay here, but the bezel action isn't the best. The bezel insert has aged markers that are also lumed and covered with a sapphire crystal insert. I like the design and I love sapphire inserts. There is a 6.5mm signed screw-down crown at the 3 o'clock position that appears to be bead blasted instead of brushed, so it doesn't perfectly match the rest of the case finish, but the crown is easy to grip and operate and there isn't any crown or stem wobble here. Flipping it over, you have a screw-down case back with some engravings on it. This watch is rated for up to 200 meters of water resistance. The dial is what is most interesting about this watch, and the only aspect of this watch that I really like. The design is familiar, yet it's also interesting compared to all the other divers we saw in 2020. I love the symmetry, the choice of colors, and the quality of finishing. There isn't an explicit chaptering, but the dial curves up slightly to behave like one, and this adds tons of depth to the overall dial layout. The minute markers are printed on this concave surface in white with good printing quality. There are applied indices for the hour markers, which combine circles, rounded batons, and a triangle. The quality of finishing here is excellent, and they're all filled with lume. The above elements lie on a radially brushed surface that has a grayish-brown metallic gradient. This is really well executed with clean finishing and great colors. There is a circular date window above the 6 o'clock index that is brilliantly positioned as if it were a planet in orbit. The date window is highlighted with a grayish-white border, which ties into the border of the inner black dial section as well. I also like that they managed to preserve the 6 o'clock hour index, so really good stuff here. The handset gets interesting, with a big triangular hour hand and a minute hand that has some Sarpaneva design influence. Both hands have large surfaces for lume, and the second hand also has a lumed element. Overall, I really like the dial design here. I also think they did a great job on finishing and overall quality control of the dial. Unfortunately, the lume on this watch is quite poor, and only got this bright because I used a UV torch to charge it up, but even then it faded pretty quickly. I think insufficient lume was applied on the bezel insert as that one was the quickest to fade. The indices were next and faded pretty quickly too. The hands are slightly better, but it's overall a bit underwhelming. I've seen similar behavior from a few other aged lume watches, so it could have been something to do with the mixture used to create the aged lume color. The bracelet is nice and is a pretty typical microbrand bracelet based on the Rolex Oyster bracelet. The finishing is good for the money, but the end links were a bit difficult to size with tough screw pins. It tapers from 20mm at the lugs to around 17.5mm at the clasp. The clasp is also standard microbrand stuff with a pressed clasp that has milled in a fold-over mechanism. The clasp does have 3 micro adjustment slots, which is nice. The end link fitment is great, with no wiggle whatsoever and matches the case well. The bracelet has quick release pins with recessed holes to guide the link pins into the case, a small but very nice design element. This watch uses an elaborate grade Sellita SW200-1, which is a good movement at both the Kickstarter price of $550 and the final retail price of $750. I put this watch on my time grapher and observed roughly plus 1 seconds per day in the dial up position and 0 seconds per day in the crown up position, so a very healthy movement too. This watch wears nicely on my 6¼ wrist, and the case shape and dimensions feel very much like a Tudor Black Bay, with a sleeker case like the Black Bay 58. The 40mm diameter works well, but the 47.5mm lug to lug width is extended to 49.5mm on the bracelet because of the end links. The height of 12.5mm feels great on the wrist, and the case back is only very slightly curved, so it is very well balanced and sits low. Overall, it's a comfortable watch and should wear nicely on medium to large size wrists. At the roughly $550 Kickstarter price, I'm certain that most folks that backed this project are very happy with their purchase. But at $750, I find this one a bit tough to accept. The Lume is underwhelming, the bezel left room for improvement, and the bracelet wasn't the best I've seen in this category. But where this watch does shine is in its interesting design. I love the dial layout, the symmetry, and the overall retro-futuristic minimalism. So for the $750, it really depends on how much you value design and how much you value the rest of the watch experience. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to read my other reviews in the link below.